Genesis 38. I read from the Institute for Scripture Research because it takes a direct translation from Hebrew to English, Greek to English, and Aramaic to English. And Yah is a very, very jealous El. In other words, if you worship anything other than him, he's jealous, so he obviously does not like that. It displeases him, brings him wrath. It's evil and wicked, especially it's like saying, say you created an imitation ant, and you created it to worship you, and it turned around, created something else, and then started worshiping it instead of you. You'd be pretty upset too, because why would you make something that doesn't work? Genesis 38. And at that time it came to be that Yehuda left his brothers and turned aside to a man, an Adulamite. That's got to be one of the cool mites of the ones I've read. It's A-D with a line underneath of it, Ullamite, whose name was Hira. H with a dot underneath of it, Irah. Excuse me. And Yehuda saw there was there a daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua, Shuwa, Shuwa, and he took her and went into her, so had sex with her. She conceived and bore a son, and he called his name E with a half a check mark on top of it. The half a check mark is always going to be on top of it, so I'm probably just going to say half a check mark, and people will know it's on the top of it, because I've never seen it on the bottom. If it is on the bottom, that's when I'll be like, well, it's actually on the bottom this time. So it's ER. And she conceived again and bore a son, and she called his name Onan, Onan, and she conceived yet again and bore a son and called his name Shelah, SHE with a half check mark, LAH, and he was at Kezib, KEZB, or KEZIB with a line underneath of it, when she bore him. Excuse me. And Yehuda took for a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Yehuda's firstborn, was evil in the eyes of Yah, and Yah took his life. Excuse me. And Yehuda said to Onan, go into your brother's wife and marry her, and raise up an heir to your brother. And Onan knew that the offspring would not be his, and it came to be when he went into his brother's wife that he spilled on the ground, lest he should give an offspring to his brother, even though his brother's dead. And see how they always say brother's wife, and all he did was have sex with her, because that's having sex is being married in Yah's eyes. Man-made traditions are just the celebrations that people would choose to do but do not have to do. It's more of a worldly way of doing things. But what he did displeased Yah, so he took his life too. Oh, so they're both dead. Excuse me. Got some phlegm up in there. Excuse me. Then Yehuda said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, remain a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah is grown, for he said, lest he also die as his brothers did. And Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house, and after a long time, excuse me, and after a long time the daughter of Shuwa, the Shuwa, Yehuda's wife died, and Yehuda was comforted and went up to his sheep shearers at Timnah, he and his friend Tyra the Adulamite, and it was reported excuse me, and it was reported to Tamar, saying, see, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep. And she took off her widow's garments and covered herself with a veil and wrapped herself and sat at the entrance to Enaim. E with a half a check mark, Naym, which was on the way to Timnah, for she saw that Shelah was grown, and she was not given to him as a wife. And Yehuda saw her and reckoned her for a whore, for she had covered her face. Wow, do only whores cover their face? What is this? Excuse me. And he turned aside to her by the way and said, Please let me come into you, for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, What do you give me to come into me? Wait. So Yehuda called her a whore and then said, Let me have sex with you. Okay, he's a whore too. And he said, Let me send you a young goat from the flock. And she said, Do you give me a pledge until you send it? So he said, What pledge should I give you? And she said, Your seal and your cord and your staff that is in your hand. And he gave them to her, and he went into her, and she conceived by him. And she arose and went away and removed her veil and put on the garments of her widowhood. And Yehuda sent the young goat by the hand of his friend to Adullamite to receive his pledge from the woman's hand, but he did not find her. And he asked the men of that place, saying, Where is the cult prostitute? Holy! Where is the cult prostitute who was beside the way of Enaim? And they said, There was no cult prostitute in this place. And he returned to Yehuda and said, I have not found her. And the men of the place also said, There was no cult prostitute in this place. And Yehuda said, Let her take them for herself, lest we become despised. For I set this young goat, and you have not found her. And it came to be about 3 new moons after that Yehuda was informed, saying, Tamar, your daughter-in-law, was whored, and see, she has conceived by whoring. And Yehuda said, Bring her out and let her be burned. You're the one who was a whore too. What do you mean? When she was brought out, she sent to her father-in-law, saying, By the man to whom these belong, I am pregnant. And she said, Please examine those who are the seal and the cord and the staff. And Yehuda examined it and said, She has been more righteous than I, because I did not give her to Shelah, my son, and he never knew her again. So he never had sex with her again. Excuse me. And it came to be at the time for giving birth that twins were in her womb. And it came to be when she was giving birth that the one put out his hand, and the midwife took a scarlet thread and bound it on his hand, saying, This one came out first. And it came to be that he drew back his hand, that his brother came out. And she said, How did you break through? This breach be upon you. This breach be upon you. So his name was called Peretz, Perets. And afterward his brother came out, who had the scarlet thread on his hand. So his name was called Zerah, Zerah, with a dot underneath of it.